What is up, players? It's your Slayer, Major Broski, coming at you with episode 6 of Legends Lounge, with, of course, the best co host anybody could ever ask for. That's right, Dead Broke Nerd. What is up? Go on ahead, Dead Broke Nerd, and explain what Legends Lounge is all about.
Yes, this is as a focus is to diversify our content so that it is not just only for new players and it's not just only for the top tier, most competitive players, but everyone in between as well. So we cover a wide range of topics. Sometimes we focus topics on tips for new players or explaining certain things. Other times, like actually today, we're going to be sort of discussing a more complicated topic that is going to sort of have much more, I guess, complex interactions and things that I think even competitive players are going to find interesting. So the podcast is basically for everyone, and we want everyone to find something in Legends Lounge.
Cool. Alright, so, um, we have the weekly news update that we're going to be doing. So, opening that up, let's going to talk about the big news that we received is that High King Emmerich is going to be doing the panels for Justin Larson's YouTube videos. Oh no, I'm just playing. No. The important news is actually the Elder Scrolls Legends balance update that's coming out right here. We don't know when. We don't have a date. They said sometime this week. I don't know. It looks like July to me, but we'll probably eventually get it. I kind of want to entertain the idea, and just for time's sake, we won't do it too much. But I do want to entertain it by saying what is one card that we think that will actually be balanced in this, and what card do we wish will be balanced but probably won't. So I'll go on ahead and let Dead Broke Nerd hit on that first.
Well, the card that almost certainly will be balanced is, I mean, there's several, I think, but the one that undoubtedly will be balanced is Tullius's Conscription. I think that's a no-brainer. The main reason people are even calling for balance changes is that card and how it's sort of taken over the environment to the point where, and we'll get to this in a bit, tournament players are winning with 3 different conscription lists. So it's just a dominating card that because it's neutral and really, really, really powerful swing, uh, you know, people are taking advantage of it, and I think everybody's a little sick of it. So that one will almost certainly get balanced in one way, shape, or form. The one that I wish would get balanced, but probably won't, is Hallowed Death Priest. I despise that card. I think it's trash. I think that it's not trash as in bad, but trash as in a bad decision that shouldn't have been printed. I think it is terrible design, and I want it to go away forever. There's no counterplay, and it is generally a negative play experience, which people do not value enough as something core for the game. So, developers, spark your pants. Go ahead. I know it's late on your schedule, but go ahead and drop a nerf to Hello Death Priest, please. Please.
I I have to agree with you on both of those statements. Actually, I would have put almost conscription in the wish list. I don't know. I'm kind of skeptical whether or not they're gonna
You don't
fix
think
it.
so?
The reason why I'm a little bit skeptical is because conscription forces the game to be under 15 minutes, which it being the majority of players I would assume play on mobile, they kind of want to force that. And having the interview with Jage that I had, he was kind of explaining why he thinks conscription shouldn't be um but nerfed, and
Should
his
not be.
explanation was, yeah, he said that it shouldn't be, which was kind of weird to me, but his explanation was it shouldn't be nerfed because it kind of forces a variety in gameplay, people trying to figure out a way to play around this. But I don't know. I'm just
Sure.
kind of putting that in which just because people complain about it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be buffed or nerfed.
Well, yeah, I would argue that like if because so many people are complaining about it for the
Mm.
longevity of the game and building a play race, it should be nerfed. But interestingly, my proposed nerf is simply taking it out of the hands of about half the classes by making it a yellow card instead of a
Mm.
neutral. So like the threat of conscription ending the game early is still very much there. You can still see it in Tribunal, which is generally considered the crummier little brother to conscription, Telvanni,
Telebani.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't it does it differently, but it doesn't do it quite as well as Telvanni. So like you can still run it there. You can still run it in Redoran if you want, which we almost never see anymore because it's so much better in blue, where you have Harpy and Wordcrafter. So I think that putting it, not reducing its power, but just limiting it from everyone having access to it's actually the way to go. To be honest, because I do like that it is a powerful swing card. And you're right, it does end the game early. That's not really a concern for me. I don't really care if the game ends in 15 minutes or 30. But you are right. They do have to cater to a mobile audience, which that's partly why I play Hearthstone on mobile, because the games are so fast.
Right.
And I often will have to, got to end the game now. I got to go do something. you know. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, that's a good point. What was the card you? So that was the card you don't think will get balanced.
Uh, yeah. I mean, as far as like the card that I think you asking me that question, like a card that I think won't get balanced, that I would like to see get balanced, and everybody, including you and everybody in the Legends community, I'm the only person ever who thinks this, and I have my reasons, but I guess I'm a new player, and this is my issue with it. It's Mournhold Trader. Um,
Ah,
but being that I'm the only one who thinks this is the reason why I think it won't happen. The reason why is because I think that it just plays too well in decks like Kalalu, which already has a strong forefront in aggro decks, and people say, oh,
yeah.
there's ways around it. You can't silence it because then you're effectively helping the other player.
Mm,
Even after it gets killed, the issue is too is that it gets to either it's too early of a drop. I don't have a solution to it, but I'll say my issues with it. Okay, it's an early
yeah.
drop. You drop it on round 2, and it does 4 damage. If you have the Ring of Magic, it's a 1 drop and it's doing 4 damage.
Mm-hmm.
The only other card that I could think of that does 4 damage that early is Young Mammoth, which is a 3 drop. So at least Young
Yeah.
Mammoth is working with the curve. Mournhold Trader, it doesn't work with the curve, but in order to supplement that, they go, okay, we'll go on ahead and give the opponent a 2-1 after it dies. A 2-1 is so easy to kill.
A two
Like,
one with guard.
it
Two
is
one
with
with
guard. To be fair, it is with guard, and I do think that kind of makes it up. The fact that it has guard, but I still think that I don't know. I don't have a solution to it. I just don't think it. They try to fix it by like giving your opponent something else, but you can't. Like I said, you can't silence it. So at least with a card like Siege Catapult, you have to wait till your lane's full, or your enemy has to use resources like silence in order to make it able to do something. But what with Mournhold Trader, he's ready to attack regardless of the circumstances. So I don't know. Maybe I'll admit, like, I'm the only one in the whole entire Legends community, and maybe in 2 weeks I'll play with a little bit of green, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe this card isn't as bad as I thought, But as of where it stands right now, I'm just kind of like, f this card. I hate it. I want to see it get nerfed.
So you're not wrong about it being very powerful in Halalu, but keep in mind,
hmm
like Mournhold Trader has been very strong for a while, but green has never been the best, like never been like the best aggressive color, right?
hmm
So like, playing Mournhold Trader, yeah, it's a very aggressive drop, but like, first off, like, it's, I mean, Shackles, the will slow it down. So Harpy is an auto include in any blue deck. Sanctuary Pet is usually in every green deck, unless it's in an aggro green deck. But it's still played in Tempo Assassin too. So like, I hear what you're saying. You haven't persuaded me,
Oh
but I
yeah,
do
no,
hear
no,
what you're
yeah,
saying. That Halalu, it does get a little bit abused in Halalu because Halalu has so much resource regeneration. And the thing about Mournhold Trader is that dropping down on turn 1 and turn 2 is great, but it's going to die at some point in the game,
yeah.
which will give your opponent a 2-1 guard that will slow it down. One of the best things is dropping it down like mid to late game in conjunction with several other cards, because that means there's now 4 or 5 cards that your opponent's got to deal with. And Halalu is great at that, especially with the Oathman and stuff like that. So, it goes back to, my big complaint, which is I really don't like that the tricolors were added to Elder Scrolls, because it has taken some cards that were balanced for that color and made it so that they combo with 2 other colors instead of just 1 other color.
Right.
So, yeah,
I'll
I've
admit
never,
though,
I've
dude, I made a Redoran deck at the beginning of the season. I've been having some fun with it, but man, um, do I see why tricolors? Now that I've been playing with it, I'm like,
yeah,
I see it, dude, because I have fun with it. Like I'm having like a ton of fun with it, but I could almost imagine like I play a warrior deck and I feel limited. When I play Redoran, it's kind of like I have everything that I need, everything
Yeah.
for an aggro deck.
Well, and now Redoran like solves the problem that like Warrior has, which is like card draw. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
now Redoran can run East March Crusaders and Crusaders Assaults. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, look, I think that the tricolor is cool. I just think that that's something I would love to see way down the road. Get corrected even more so. So like right now, the only downside to a tricolor deck is you have to run 25 additional cards. But
Mm-hmm.
honestly, that's really not that big of a downside considering you just pick the best 25 cards in other class and roll up with that. And with all the cycle, like every time a set comes out, some sort of cycle or card draw is introduced, which just increases like the consistency and with which these decks can cycle through their 75 cards instead of the 50 cards. uh so in my mind, quite frankly, tricolor decks need correction, or like the tricolor format needs correction. If it was me, I would consider forcing tricolors to only run 2 copies of a card instead
Mm-hmm.
of 3 copies of a card. And then you really do have to pull from a wider pool. But I'm a madman, so what do I know?
Right. I will say this. Go like still staying on the topic of like what cards that we want buffed and not buffed. I didn't say the one that I think that will probably be not buffed, but like will be balanced. I think the card that I think that will be balanced, and I direct messaged this to you the other day. And I'm gonna jump the forefront here and say Cruel Firebloom is finally gonna get the one drop that everybody's been asking for. It's such an easy fix too. Like it's not. Does it actually fix the card? I don't know because it still does 5 damage and the trade is still there, and that's the biggest
Well,
issue
it
with
doesn't
the
get pulled with
card.
Skulk.
Say what?
Well, then it doesn't get pulled with Goblin Skulk, which
Yeah.
is the
Mm-hmm.
problem.
Right.
Yeah, I don't. That's actually one that I think I would doubt will get balanced. And
Watch,
not
we're
because
just
it should.
disagreeing this morning.
Yeah, well, I think it should. I totally agree that it should. But you have to remember that Cruel Firebloom's been around since base set
Uh-huh.
and has never been messed with. And like, Manticore's been nerfed 3 dang times. Thorn Histmage has been nerfed multiple times. Like, Shrieking Harpy's been nerfed. Like, I'm just saying, like, Firebloom's never been touched, and I think that will probably stay that way. Because there
Mm-hmm.
was a time where Firebloom was seeing play in Altar Assassin that was really, really strong. And I mean, Firebloom was getting pulled with Goblin Skull, getting used to blow up out more Spy Masters, and Altar Assassin was really fun back in the day. But bottom line, like it wasn't nerfed then. I don't think it'll be nerfed now, just because I think that it's one of those things. Like I think that the you know devs are looking at, although maybe Sparky Pants is different than Direwolf in this regard, but like looking at old stuff and being like, we were perfect back then. The game was perfect back then. I'm not going to mess with it. I don't know. I just it's been that way for so long. I
Right.
have a
I
hard
mean,
time thinking they're gonna man up and change it. To be honest.
we just need another Manticore patch.
You know what? If we nerf Manticore one more time, I think it would be the environment would be perfect.
Exactly. I think on Silverfuse's stream the other day, she was actually memeing that. She was like, okay, so you drop it on the board, and it randomly does half damage to another creature on the board. So if it has 1 health, it has 0.5 health now, because it has to be fair, right?
Right. Manticore has to get nerfed. It's a must nerf card.
Yes. Find the facts on Legends Lounge.
I did lose to Manticore the other day though.
I think Manticore is still a good card. I just don't think it's as good as it used to be.
I if for 10 Magicka, it should still have guard. And it should, if they wanted to, honestly, like off topic, I know, but
Go ahead.
Manticore should be a 10 mana 5/5 guard with the same effect, destroy a creature in the lane. But just having that one less stats makes it easier to remove, but it still has the impact of a guard that blows something up. But like it's basically double the mana or Magicka as a 5 mana 5/5 guard, which is standard. Now we have 5 mana 5/6 guards with like Indomitable Ordinator, and even that doesn't really see play.
Especially with the dominance and silence.
Yeah,
Not even just. I'm just talking about like silence creatures in general. Like they're so much more prevalent in the modern.
It's easier to get rid of a guard. Yeah, so why not just slap guard back on it?
Mm-hmm.
Sparky Pants, fix Manticore. Thank you. Because I used to like that card a lot. Control Mage was viable because Manticores existed.
Maybe if we nerf it, it'll make Control Mage even more viable. I mean,
Or if they, right,
the nerf does it, dude. You're looking at this the wrong direction.
right. Maybe if they nerf it enough, it's like two negatives make a positive, and it'll actually get a buff.
Right. Well, this would be four negatives.
I don't know how that works. Oh yeah. All right.
Okay, let's
We
move
gotta
on.
move on.
Okay. We're still having madness deals. I do have this in my notes because I do want to share it. I think the best deal that they've had so far, my personal opinion. By the way, today's deal is 3 Skyrim packs for 10 gold. So go on ahead and grab that. Don't leave the stream. We need the views. Stay. No, don't leave. Don't leave. Wait. The deal is staying on. All right, I promise. But best deal so far, in my opinion, was the 21 drop. It was oh god, it was 10. Well, I think I'm doing my math wrong because it wasn't 21. I have, yeah, it was 7 core, 7 Skyrim, and 7 Morrowind for $10. I bought both of these. They had one for 10, 10, 10 for $20, which was good, but I think the 10, 10, 10 for the 21 was just for $10 instead was way better. And I think that's the
Yeah.
best deal so far.
I mean, there's a lot of really good deals in terms of like new players coming in and wanting to get caught up. Well, shoot, I mean that's pretty darn good. And I think that like I would like to see them do this Festival of Madness thing or something similar, like you know 2 or 3 times a year, just for new players coming in to get some great deals. To like, yeah, I mean they'd have to drop a little bit of cash, and some people are only want to do free to play. But the further like, especially with no like set rotation in sight,
Mm,
it's important to have ways for players to like catch up and like get um you know get caught up on the cards so they can actually enjoy the depth of the game, but without having to pay the same amount, quite frankly, as everyone who's been around here for forever, or dump the same amount of time, in which case they'll probably never catch up.
yeah, because um some of the more better, I wouldn't say better, trying to say this in such a way that won't give me too much trouble, but I guess I'll just say it. Some of the people that are more competitive players that are willing to put an investment, they've
Mhm.
proclaimed that they put like something over $100 or $200. Some players just don't want to do that, and this
Yeah.
fine. Like that's cool. Like I'm not dogging on anybody for the way that they spend their money
Oh.
and how they want to stay in the competitive field. But what I'm saying is for people who
Mhm.
want to play this game a little bit more casually but still want to play on the ladder, this allows them the opportunity to kind of catch up. So I think this is really awesome, and I agree with you. I really hope to see this. I think 3 times a year might be a little bit too much, but like twice a year, maybe doing something like
Yeah.
Christmas
Whatever.
time and then like a summertime. I think
Yeah.
that'd be pretty. In my opinion, that'd be nice.
Well, yeah, and the thing too is like and this is something I've always said. Um, there's that cultural stigma, I think, of, oh, you spent money on video games. That is the stupidest crap I've ever heard. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people spend their money on a nice car, or new clothes or good suit, and nobody gives them crap about that. But oh no, you go and do something like nerdy and spend your money on a passion and a hobby that you have. People spend hundreds of dollars on dang golf clubs. All right, you know that's
Especially
one of
when
the
you put
most.
the hours
The
that
only
you're.
time I play golf is on my phone. All right.
Let's just
Like,
and let's just be real here, dude. I put like, I'm be honest. I probably put about $50 in this game, and I put like 300 hours into it. All right, between my computer, which I have 200 in, and probably 100 on my phone. And I have to think to myself, I'm kind of like, okay, I put $50 on this game, but like, first game that comes to my mind is Spider-Man. I didn't even buy it, but let's just say you buy Spider-Man, it's like a 40-hour game, and then you're done. Like, that's it. So like, in my opinion, the return of investment is just,
yeah, it's
it's
just
worth
one of
it.
those things. Like nobody should ever, like getting after
Mm-hmm.
someone or demeaning someone because they're spending money on a game like Elder Scrolls or Hearthstone or whatever, or even if they want to spend their money. There's a difference between like gambling addiction, which is something that unfortunately like could theoretically be relevant in a game where you have randomized outcomes, right? But like someone who's just spending their money on the thing that they're passionate about, and like I see that so much, like this like free to play elitism, and it's just like I'm free to play. I'm mostly free. I'm not even completely free to play. I've spent a little bit of money on this game. I bought Clockwork City like straight up just because I was really busy at the time and like didn't feel like grinding the gold out, you know. And like I didn't feel bad about it, right? I had the money. It's my
Mm-hmm.
money. It wasn't impacting. I don't have a wife or kids or anything, so I don't. It's not like I have to support someone else.
Right.
So it's.
Screw it.
Yeah, why not? It's my hobby. It's what I love. So yeah, these are great deals for people who want to get jumpstart, their collection in the game. So I think, and I thought it was only going on for like a week or so. It's still going. I'm like, this is pretty great. They're really
Yeah.
going all in on
I
making
think
this.
even the first episode of Legends Lodge, we were like, yeah, I think it's gonna be a week long, and then it's like,
Well,
no, we just messing. It's gonna be 20
no,
weeks long.
yeah,
um,
uninformed.
I do want to say on a final note to this, and then we got to move on. On a final note, I do want to say like if they do actually do this like twice a year, I don't think they need to make it this long. I mean, it's nice to have it because we haven't had content for like ever, but I'm just saying like in the future, maybe 2 weeks. I think.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I
It's
don't
one of
know.
those things like, the people that are already here don't
Uh-huh.
need it,
Right.
but the people that are coming in do need it, or like should, want the option. So I think it doesn't ultimately it doesn't really matter, how often it is. They could run it all year and it really
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't warp the game in any negative fashion. So, but I think for the fun of it being, oh, it's a festival, then yeah, I mean, you're right.
Right.
Make it a regular thing. I was saying I think they should do really small deals, once, every day or maybe once a week, a special, if anyone has ever played Destiny or Destiny 2, they have this little vendor, Zur, who shows up on the weekends and gives you a really good deal on some really powerful gear.
Mm-hmm.
Like, or really rare gear rather. It's not necessarily high power level, but it's rare gear, and that way, like, oh man, I'm missing this piece from my exotic collection. Let me go, oh, he's got the piece I want, or oh, he doesn't have it this week, maybe next week. Like, I
Right.
think that's just a really fun way to get people to tune in on the weekends and check, just to check in, log in, play a couple games. Even if you weren't going to log in before, you might now.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a fun little motivational way. But yeah,
All right. Well, this is the next part on the news piece. Harp just stole it from us. The podcast is coming soon. How soon? It's looking like July. Um, I'm gonna bury that joke into the ground. Uh, yes, I've been working on the podcast. I've been having finals and whatnot, but we have already paid for Open It Up to put it on a podcasting service. The only thing that's left is that I actually take time out of my life to actually upload it on there, and then we're gonna send it towards like iTunes and whatnot. So it's coming. It's coming. How soon? I don't know, because it's not that I'm not working on it. Effectively, tomorrow I will have time that I will be working on it and doing it. But it just depends on how long it's going to take for me to render, number one, and it also takes how long before it gets approved to these other podcasting services. So that's really, I don't know. It's looking like July. So,
yeah.
um,
I'm excited for that too, and I think there's people we've been asked about it several times about this. So I think that'll be really good. I mean, I listen to podcasts when I'm driving places. That's the main time I listen to podcasts. So I'm all about that. I'm very excited,
I
and I
do.
need to I need to remember to send you my share of the money.
Yeah, no,
You got to
it's
remind
okay.
me. You got to
Yeah, yeah,
remind
yeah.
me.
I'll
I'll
text it
remember.
to you. With him bringing up the money too, just because Dead Broke Nerd and I are already like major content creators and we have bills to pay in our own life, we're gonna start asking the viewers and the listeners on the podcast and the people who listen on YouTube to, if they're willing to, we would be very much appreciative, just so you guys could support the podcast. A whole total whopping $14 a month.
Yep, that's
Just
all we
from
need.
That's all we need. I already pay like $25 a month alone on my video editing software, and I don't ask money for that. So this would just help. This would just help us, so we can be able to put
And
this
it's
on the
not going to go
podcast.
anywhere if nobody pays for it. We'll still do it. It just makes it easier on us.
Mm-hmm.
So consider, and like if it was more expensive, I wouldn't feel comfortable asking people for that, because it's like, we're a small community and it's tough. There's a lot of, Elder Scrolls right now is trying to build itself in the community, and but $14 a month is all we would need. So that it's just something that, like, and we want to actually also, like, we've been working on, we have all these grand aspirations for things that we want to do in the future, like talking about, the state of different classes and like dissecting, cards in top tier competitive decks, bringing in more guests, all
Mm-hmm.
things that we have these grand aspirations for. And we're just trying to get it sort of established, and get that podcast going to increase the listenership. So yeah, and the other thing too is, even if you can't, even if you're not at the place where you can, donate, it's really just about, just tell more people about it. If you got a buddy who's playing Elder Scrolls, or
Right.
just shoot them a link, Give them, especially some of the ones, if they're newer players, send them the ones with the newer player content. If they're a veteran player, say, hey, here's an episode where they talk about something really, in depth, like they talk about the Ring of Magica for half an hour. Just spreading the word about it is just as good too. So yeah, just wanted to say my thing on that. I'm done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. And I absolutely 100% 10% agree. Like if you can't financially support us, so just by being here and listening is all the support that we need. So it's just a little way of going, hey, it would make it easier on us, and I know you guys really enjoy this stuff, and we enjoy making this content for you. So it's not going out anywhere if we don't get it.
Nope.
But we're gonna open it up anyway. So
yeah.
All right, let's go on ahead and move on from that. So we're the next part of the news, and we're already 30 minutes into this episode. So let's go on ahead and make this a bit short. But you want to make the Warp Meta announcements?
Yeah. So Warp Meta 43 results. It was cast by Justin
and Silverfuse.
Silverfuse, and I didn't put that on my notes, so I'm sitting here like, that's right. Who cast it? And so the finals was Endozoa versus Please Don't Hack Me. They're both on the team together. They prepped together, so it was kind of funny to watch them play each other. Please Don't Hack Me took the win. Endozoa played his usual lineup of mid-battle mage, Tempo Assassin, and Aggro Halalu. That's the standard, the golden standard for Endozoa. Those are 3 very strong decks in the tournament format. Please Don't Hack Me, however, won with Conscription Talvani, Conscription Tribunal, and Factotum Conscription Archer. So, next week that probably won't be a thing.
We'll see.
Suck at Conscription. No, it was really cool to watch. Some really strong games, and actually, before the finals, we got to see the Factotum Conscription Archer, which is one of my favorite decks. That was actually, fun fact, Broski, that's the first deck that I made it to Legend with, was Factotum Conscription Archer.
Okay. My first time making Legend was mid sword.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where we're at with number 43 results. Number 44 will be this weekend. You should go and sign up. It's very casual. It's free to enter. It is on Sunday starting at noon Eastern Standard Time. So do the math for wherever you are. And actually, the casters, it's supposedly, if they can get it figured out, going to be a tri-cast of Lord Costa, Lasergician, and Justin Larson. So that should be pretty dope. Lots of fun, and I'm excited. I'm actually kind of hoping it comes after the balance changes. I'm hoping like balance changes hit Friday, so everyone's scrambling around to get legal decks for Warp Meta. I think that would be like the coolest thing.
That would be entertaining. Or like the morning of. Ooh.
Oh my god, that would be hilarious. So I'm really hoping for something.
I bet they won't do that to them because it's so big, but still.
I don't know. If they drop it like Wednesday, Thursday, that would be like fine. And then everybody would have like Friday, Saturday to figure out lineups with the new changes. Oh man, I think that would be super exciting. I'm actually, if that happens, I'm gonna be jealous of the guys casting because I'm gonna wish I was casting it instead.
Talking about tournaments, I do want to invite everybody once again another week to the Blood Warriors Guild. We do tournaments every Tuesday and Friday. I don't participate in the Tuesdays. I informally casted the last Friday's tournament. I played in the first round and lost with both my Aggro Veteran and Aggro Warrior deck. And right after that, I just said, hey, I'm just going to watch all the other players until they finish the tournament. So it was fun. We had a good time. It's a lot more informal than Warp Meta, so if you guys are interested in joining the Blood Warriors Guild, feel free to direct message me or tweet at me at major or MAJ_broski on Twitter. So, yeah, y'all. Let's move into the main segment today. Inspired by none other than the Dead Broke Nerd himself, I'm going to leave the link right here. Did I spell it right? I have no idea. Probably not. Anyways, we have an article that Dead Broke Nerd. Oh, see, I do have it, but it just needs to. Anyways, Dead Bro Nerd recently released an article on the state of one-drop cards in the Elder Scrolls Legends, and I read through it, and this freaking article is one of the best Team Rank Star articles ever. So much so
Oh,
that for the next week, I will not even be advertising my own articles on my own stream. I will be advertising Dead
what?
Broke Nerds articles because the article on one drops because it is really that good, and I think other players would get a huge advantage from reading this article, and it has inspired this today's episode. So it's for today's episode, we will be talking about the state of one cards. And in this, at the end of the episode, we're going to talk back about again the Ring of Magica because the Ring of Magica, of course, increases the value of your drops into two drops. And how does that actually work with the comparison of the state of one card? So we'll get straight into it with the cards that Dead Broke Nerd had during his article. Starting with Crown Quartermaster, Marked Man, and Mudcrab Merchant. I'm gonna go on ahead and enlarge this. It's gonna cover our faces a little bit, so I'm sorry. We'll cover my face because we're gonna have Dead Bro talk about these cards. Why did you include these cards in your article?
So the thing about these three cards is they see a large amount of play in the competitive Elder Scrolls scene, and so that's something I was focusing on, by the way. I was focusing because there's a lot to be talked about, and I had to narrow my topic down pretty small because I was, you can't have an article be too long; it'll get boring, right? So it's already, on the edge there. So I limited it to one cost creatures, and I was focusing on the competitive scene. So these are three of the six one cost creatures that see play consistently in the competitive scene. So Crown Quartermaster, Marksman, and Mudcrab Merchant. And the reason why they see play is because the biggest reason, and I sort of summed this up, that one cost struggle to see play in the environment alongside a couple other factors is because it's every card in a system like Elder Scrolls is a resource in and of itself. Just by being a card in hand, it is a resource. Now, Magicka is your conventional resource, right? Of like, okay, my each card has a cost, and I spend the Magicka in order to. But the Magicka refills every turn fully, and it scales up as the game progresses. Your cards in hand do not. You get one card every turn, assuming all things stay equal. Now, obviously, there are cards that draw other cards, and there's also cards, and there's also the runes breaking, which draws you cards. Um, but the thing is, like, there are you need ways to refill your hand, and one drops are generally the weakest investment of your resource of being a card, right? Because they are the smallest stat blocks in the game, and for reasons that we'll sort of discuss later on, they are the easiest to answer, and they have sort of the weakest initial impact. So playing a one drop, the best time to play is on turn one. After that, it generally reduces in value. Um, and even playing it on turn one, it is the smallest investment of your resource of your hand, compared to Magic. So Crown Quartermaster, Markman, and Mudcrab Merchant, why do they see play? Because they generate a card to replace it. Crown Quartermaster puts a steel dagger in your hand, which is, a small boon. It's a one cost plus one item, but that will help set up trades further along the line or even allow you to go face. With a little bit of extra damage, Marked Man puts a 0-2 makeshift defenses with guard, and that actually allows you to trigger plot effects and stuff like that. It's also a guard minion, which is always useful. Mudcrab Merchant, of course, can give a card to your opponent, but potentially gives you the best chance at finding a really useful card for the initial investment of one Magicka. So these cards replace themselves in your hand. That's why people play them, because if they didn't do that, it's much harder to justify.
All right, and your second set. Doo-doo-doo.
Yeah. Are they up? Are they up on screen?
They up on screen right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So the second set are sort of aberrations almost. So like these are outliers when you think about it. These are the other three one cost creatures that see consistent play. The highest one being Ungolem of the three. Ungolem is a card that is not played for its 1/1 for one stat block at all. I stand by my supposition that if this card was a one cost spell that said shuffle three Brotherhood Assassins into your deck, people would still play it. They don't need the body. It's a 1/1 Stat block is extremely weak. It doesn't trade favorably into much of anything. It just is a trigger effect for a really useful late game utility, in that like you're gonna find 3 3 for 1 Brothered Assassins that have lethal and they replace themselves. So it's just a good investment for your long-term board. So this one is seen in a lot of green control decks or later game decks. It's dancing. uh, the Iliac Sorcerer is different in that it is utilized predominantly in Siege Catapult Warrior decks, as Warrior needs to Siege Catapult needs to fill the lane in order to attack. So it's helpful to have a couple 1-cost creatures, so that you could theoretically fill it early in the game. So combining a 1-cost with a 2-cost if you have 3 Magicka, and work towards filling it up. Additionally, Iliac Sorcerer is one of the best cards at making items, or just in general buffs. So from Orc Clan Captain or a Steel Scimitar or a Morkel Gatekeeper, taking those initial investments and effectively doubling them when it comes to his attack stats. So he's an extremely aggressive card if you're willing to invest a little bit of space around buffing him. So, Orc Clan Captains are already going to be included there. Put a couple Steel Scimitars in the deck, and you're pretty happy with it. So Iliac Sorcerer is an aggressive 1-drop where even in a lot of aggressive decks, we don't see a lot of 1-drops being played. Deepwood Trapper is, again, a outlier, and the Deepwood Trapper is actually a defensive tool. Now, I said defensive tool in my post, and what I didn't do a good enough job of explaining is that defensive tool doesn't just mean protecting your face, but also means protecting your investments of other creatures in that lane. So, Deepwood Trapper comes down to guard some high attack, low defense creatures that you have. Let's say an Eastmarch Crusader, that's a 4/2 stat block, easy to kill. Deepwood Trapper comes down, and when your opponent plays something to try to clear your Eastmarch Crusader, not only does it have to go through the guarded Deepwood Trapper, but it also becomes shackled afterwards, which means it has to wait one more whole turn before it can get at your creatures again. So it's extremely valuable as a defensive tool. It does protect your face. It has value in the later game to slow down your opponents. If you're in an aggressive matchup and your opponent is sort of going all in on you, you can play this down. It will effectively absorb 2 attacks, 1 to kill it, and the other because it'll get shackled. So Deepwood Trapper, like I said, very useful multi-purpose defensive tool, and one of the only defensive tools that actually sees play in the 1-cost creature slot.
All right. I was having fun making the.
I noticed.
Yes. You were like, I saw you trying to read the card, and you were like, wait, where's he going? Oh my gosh.
Come back here.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you saw Charmer's article. I mean, not article, but his I have this a little bit later in the notes, but I'm gonna bring it up right now on his video on our mascot, Frenzied Elite.
Yes.
Frenzied Elite. We're gonna be talking about that in a bit, Hart. Frenzied Elite. When he talked about that, he said 1-drops are resources to help build up what you already kind of have. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I haven't seen that. I'll have to go look at the clip. Was it on his stream?
It's on his YouTube channel. He has a
okay.
he if I can find it in the notes here. He said it hang on. Yeah. He was talking about how 1 cards enable more than anything else. So it helps enable, like when you drop down Crown Quartermaster, it enables you to summon the 1 dagger that does the 1/0. If you do something which we'll talk about in a bit, I'll just go ahead and pop up the list right now. Not that one, this one. Relentless Raider, like when you break a rune, it allows him to do more damage to the face. So I don't know. They just seem more like enablers the way that Charmer described, and I'm just curious if you would agree with that.
Well, yeah, they definitely are. The thing is, and again, like we're like I talked about this in the other article, why cards outside of these I kind of put it as like the main archetype of that sees play, the ones that replace themselves in value, and then the ones that are outliers. And the reason they're outliers is because they feed a certain strategy, right? So like Iliac Sorcerer feeds and enables. So in that case, yeah, totally right.
Mm-hmm.
The Siege Catapult aggro warrior strat, where like you need to have a couple cheaper guys because you need to fill that lane so your Siege Catapult can attack. And since you're already running things like Steel Scimitars because they're just a good investment, um, and Orc Clan Captains, it sort of doubles down on its effectiveness of your other cards. So yeah, like that's why Iliac Sorceresses play. Unglim, yeah, it's like it doubles down on the idea of like utilizing lethal creatures to hit clears later on in the game. So that works too. It also is Unglim's used as cycle mechanics, so that's one more use. It's often used in conscription. It enables it strengthens your conscription play. So that's one more use, right? It's like, and that's the thing. So creatures are only utilized for like these one cost creatures are, whether this is intentional or not, this is the state of them. They're only utilized as I guess combo fodder, and preferably when they replace themselves in value.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's why we see Marked Man. Marked Man creates another creature that's free. Well, that's really important because it enables, and that really the thing I just didn't use the term enable, but enables the plot effects. It enables you to get extra value out of your big resolute ally or your divine fervor in a token deck. Um, it enables you, just like the Deepwood Trapper, to defend your bigger threats that are susceptible to your opponent's creatures. So yeah, totally agree. And there's a lot of creatures like the ones that you just brought up on the screen that are like powerful in a bubble. Like the Relentless Raider, I would argue is like would be in these along with the six that sees competitive play. I think Relentless Raider is good enough to see competitive play, but aggressive red decks outside of Warrior. We're just not seeing like the old school like charge battle mage deck. We're seeing what like a lot more like let's make sure we get big bodies down, we conserve resources at much less of the go face at all costs, ignore trades. Like the Smork style isn't as popular right now.
Mm-hmm.
Getting favorable trades and building a large board is more popular, so that's why Relentless Raider doesn't see as much play. Descendant of Alkosh, I thought it was Akatosh.
I thought it was
Doesn't,
too. I wanted to bring that up.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not
yeah,
Akatosh. Uh-uh.
yeah, it's Alkosh. Interesting. Descendant of Alkosh, so it pilfers +1/+1 and gains a random keyword. That card is a card that is solo. Like that card doesn't play into other cards. And although it's a powerful bubble card, it's so easily cleared, and that's something we talk about. Is like there are cheap 1 mana removal cards that just render your 1 cost creature worthless. The difference is Firebolt is useful later in the game, as it can pair with other removal. Same with Execute being slightly less so. So it's much less of a bad investment. Whereas your creature, your 1 cost creature on turn 1, you're gonna play it, right? So Morai Tongue Aspirant, same thing with Descendant. It's never viable. It's never good enough to warrant playing like a Quicksilver Crossbow on just to get a copy of a 2/1, and it can just be zapped or traded into on your opponent's turn. It's more annoying than anything else, the
Mm-hmm.
Moratong Aspirant. But if 1 drops in general became more, useful through some changes to the Ring of Magicka, then I think Moratong would fit as a tempo-based, 1 cost who comes down and sticks. Because as long as it comes down first and gets the trade first, it'll summon another copy as it dies and stick around. Shadowmere is really just included as a combo-y
Shadow
meme
meme.
card. Yeah, Shadow Meme. It's neat. But ultimately, it takes too long to get to its value later in the game of a 4/4, for 4 with charge. It's just inconsistent. I'd rather have Ungolem, which gives me a 3/3 for 1, not a 4/4 for 4. And even though they don't have charge, they cycle a card and give me lethal. Shadowmere is just too. Uh, it's inconsistent. It doesn't do enough. and Nord Firebrand has the same charge stats as it. So like all I'm saying with the one costers is that like you're right. The ones that do see play enable other abilities and preferably take resources and use them wisely. Um, yeah.
Talking about these legendary cards here, and the reason why I brought them up for the show was because they're legendaries, obviously, and just
Mm.
seeing the power that they have in this, you know, especially when compared to your last list, you know, here where we have Iliac Sorcerer, Deepwood Trapper. This is actually legendary. The last one here, the listener, he's a legendary unique, but as you said, he's only played to gain the effects of having more draws. The same could be said about these cards right here, Raider, not Akatosh, the Morak, Tong, and Shadowmere. They're not in of themselves. In of itself, it's not that good. Like even you could even argue that like a card, the only card that I would say that is in of itself is that by itself is good is Deepwood Trapper. Iliac Sorcerer, you only see the effects of him if you equipped him with an item. So if you equipped Iliac Sorcerer, let's say with a I don't know, I've really been loving to equip it with, for example, the I lost my train of thought. You know, Dawnbreaker, right? You
Yeah.
attack, you trade with another creature, and then now it's a 10-5. I mean, that's freaking amazing, right?
Yeah.
So Deep Boy Trapper, it's 1-3, but even then, you're only putting on the board to make things survive that are already on the board. So Relentless Raider, you have him on the board. He's only a 2-1, but I've seen this in last week we had Logic, who went number 7
Mm.
last season. I mean, that's yeah, he went number 7 last season. He won the Blood Warriors Guild last Friday, and he did a Merchant Archer deck, and he had
Mm.
Relentless Raider in there, and he just kept on dropping Nord Firebrands and hitting for
Yeah,
the
with
face.
markets. Yeah.
And he was just doing damage. Relentless Raider, even more damage. I mean, it was just crazy what Relentless Raider would do. But as far as like actually putting Relentless Raider down on the first turn, no,
Mm.
because it wouldn't work well with the strategy that was worked in within market. Excuse
Yeah.
me. So and then Descendant of Not Akatosh, the card, it has value, but you actually have to be able to use Piffler, and so it works around Piffler as a deck. Like if you don't have
Totally.
Piffler, I mean, what are you going to use it for? You know, Morag Tong, I would agree, it's annoying. I hate dealing with it. But it forces the other, at least Morag Tong, it forces the other player to trade with it, because if you allow it to trade with you, then they get another one. So it's a resource that um utilizes trade. And then
Mm.
Shadowmere, even though I would definitely say to me more than anything else, literally you're using the way that the card reads, right? Um, Regardless of whether or not it's actually good, I'd much rather have Nord Firebrands. I agree with you, but the way that it reads is you're using it to enable it to be resummoned, to
Mm.
have the +3 with the charge.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, so one thing I did want to say is I think like Morag Tong and maybe even Descendant of Alkosh like could be good and have been good in other environments.
Mm-hmm.
But like the way things work now, like it's just that like Descendant coming down, and if you run into Tribunal, there's like 17 different ways they can kill it on turn one, and then like the whole point is Descendant has to stick around, you
Mm-hmm.
know. It has to, but it just has to sit before it ever gets past a 1/1. It has to wait a whole turn before it gets past 1/1 stats, and that brings me to the point you were talking about Iliac Sorcerer. Um, this is one thing I slightly disagree with your evaluation that it is only good when it comes to like comboing stuff with it. It thrives when you combo items and stuff with it or
Mm-hmm.
buffs with it. But keep in mind, it is effectively a 3/2 stat block because it has ward, right?
Okay.
Because it guarantees that it takes at least one trade and
Right.
lives because it has ward. And
Mm-hmm.
now, like yeah, like a one attack creature isn't doing much in terms of like killing something off. But then once that 1 point comes through, it becomes a 2/1 with no ward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like you can think of it as it isn't, but you can effectively think of it as having a 3/2 stat block over its lifetime, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the 1/1, yeah, the ward will blow up and then it'll be a 2/1. But the other thing is that like you think about how Wardcrafter is not a bad play to just slap down and ward itself, right? Because of the fact that like
It has
uh,
ward.
it it has ward, it'll absorb a trade and then still be able to have its damage. So like if your opponent plays a 4/4 creature and you have a Wardcrafter with 2/1, all things being equal, which it won't be, right? But it forces your opponent to invest in making that trade better because otherwise this 2 cost 2/1 with ward will kill that 4 cost 4/4 over the course of 2 turns or 2 trades, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like it's the same with Iliac Sorcerer, and that's without even getting buffed by something, you know. And it's awkward. Your opponent sits there. It's like, well, do I want to like playing into a ward creature is awkward for an opponent, so they oftentimes ignore it because they'll have to take 2 trades just to remove it. And of course, like I said, it'll effectively deal 3 damage to whatever is trying to trade with it, which most 2 costs don't have more than 3 health.
Right.
So like that's a card that eats 2 costs, which is kind of rare actually. Um, so that's where Iliac Sorcerer sort of becomes that much stronger card than I think is surface level apparent. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I did want to bring this up because you didn't bring this up in your article.
Mm.
But instead of talking about here, the creatures,
Mm.
we're gonna talk about some of the action cards that have 1 drops, and I do want to focus on this because, like I said, you didn't focus on it. I'm not trying to like call you out or anything, but we do have
Yeah.
some of the most valuable cards in the game, and like I said,
Mm.
even at the beginning of this, I don't know if I did bring it up, but we can't go through every single 1 drop in the game just because time restraints. But I did bring up these cards. I do think these cards are worth value. I do think that some of these 1 drops are obviously better than others. For example, I think that Firebolt in this list is probably the weakest, but it's still pretty powerful out of the 4 that I have on screen. I have Corpus Disease, Firebolt, Scouting Patrol, and Shadow Shift. So I don't know. Before I say my piece on this, I'd like to hear what you have to say on this as well.
Yeah, I was intentionally focusing on creatures
Mm-hmm.
because of the idea that this is a board state game. And
Mm-hmm.
while there are, and it was one thing because like I was interested, and I make the comparison in the article, like looking at Hearthstone, where 1 costs have been, you know, perpetually involved in shaping a game, as in almost every deck outside of the hardest control decks want to run 1 costs, and 1 costs are both focused on from a design perspective and incentivized. Um, Whereas here, and I'm not talking 1 cost cards, I'm talking 1 cost creatures, getting that initial investment on the board. And I'm sort of talking about why that isn't as good right now in the environment. And part of the inclusion was that I mentioned early on. I didn't touch on it too much after that, but there's some really strong 1 cost action cards that sort of openly mitigate a 1 cost creature card, just completely render it worthless. So Firebolt and Execute was the 2 ones I kind of mentioned. But the other thing to keep in mind is I do agree. I think 1 cost action cards and 1 cost items are extremely potent
Mm-hmm.
and present alternatives because like a Steel Scimitar is effectively a 2/2. Um, it's a 2/2 for 1, but it effectively is like if you have a creature on board already, it is effectively 2/2 for 1 with charge, if
Mm.
that makes sense.
Yeah. No.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that typically is more valuable than a 1 cost creature that can get easily removed. You can stack your Steel Scimitar, on a 2 cost creature that you coined out, or excuse me, ringed out. See, ringed out sounds weird to me, right? Because it's like you're wringing out a towel. Anyways, and so like that's typically like considered more valuable in an aggressive deck as a 1 cost, action or a 1 cost, so like Rapid Shot to cycle cards and set up better trades, or Steel Scimitar in red. But we talk about Shadow Shift. I think Shadow Shift is the most powerful card here.
Mm-hmm.
Shifting lanes is like game breaking, game defining in the early game because it ruins your opponent's investments on the board until they can put something back over. It basically just puts their creatures all in the wrong place. Like one of the most powerful things that I talked about in my article is the strength of the dual lane system and how it generally benefits the person responding to the lane system. So like the person responding to your opponent's threats, is generally favored by a dual lane system because they can put it somewhere that it won't get traded with. Shadow Shift, of course, breaks that and cycles itself.
Mm-hmm.
Which we talked about one cost cards and we talked about one cost creatures that replace itself in hand. Even better is drawing a card afterwards, so cantripping, And so, like, Shadow Shift is nuts for the record, guys. Almost every green deck, regardless of what it is, runs Shadow Shift. And even if it doesn't, there's an argument that it should be. Scouting Patrol is nice because it summons two little guys, which triggers a lot of the token effects. I think this card is probably the weakest of the three that we're looking at, but it sees a lot of
Four.
combo potential, right? And you said because it's an enabler, right? It enables buffs
Mm.
to board buffs to be better. It pairs with Fifth Legion trainers. It pairs with Divine Fervors, Pit Lion. A lot of cards that want a lot of yellow creatures out. And then Corpus Disease, I think, is a card that has very niche play, but is very strong. And
Mm.
probably it doesn't see quite enough play compared to its strength. And the only reason it probably doesn't is because there's plenty of other silences running around the game right now. With purple being probably the strongest color, it's really easy for them to just play Shadow Fence. Just play 3 Shadow Fence. Um,
I would definitely say just I should say that Corpse's Disease. Uh, I haven't played. I don't. I haven't played a green decks long enough on the ladder to on the competitive platform. Like I've played it like on the ladder to play it, but like to actually like, hey, I'm gonna try to win. I haven't. So yes,
yeah.
Shadow Shift is good, but I can't speak from my experience with that. But I have a lot of experience competitively trying to climb the ladder to top 100 with Corpus Disease, Firebolt, and Scouting Patrol. And I will say this: Corpus Disease is a really good card, bottom line, and I'm surprised that I don't see more play of it. Corpus Disease could be used on a lot of things, and I have won games with it on both sides of the field because it says, I just want to like read it, silence a creature, not an ally creature, not an opponent. It's your any creature on the board. So let's
Yeah.
say it's at the end of the game, you have a 5/5 that can hit face for 5 because he only has 5 life left. But he has a guard in the way. It's a 6/6 with guard. Well, Corpus Disease. Yes, now it's a 7/5, but it doesn't matter. You win the game, right? Corpus Disease. You have it in hand, and you've dropped down a Siege Catapult. And they keep on clearing they keep on clearing your lane, right? Well, you need to build up your tempo again. Corpus Disease, which some people have told me. I'll just say one person has told me you don't want to use Corpus Disease on a Siege Catapult. You would much rather use it on other things. I don't understand that argument because they can clear the board. There are things, especially in a warrior deck, like if you're going against something that has blue, you drop down Ice Storm, like everything's killed, but guess what? Your Siege Catapult could still stay on the board. So I don't really see the point of that argument. That's something that this is a more experienced player telling me this, and for the first time, I always say the first time, but one of the few times I'll tell that experienced player, like, I disagree with you because I think Corpus Disease does give value to things like Siege Catapult. You could even put Corpus Disease on, I'm trying to think of the name of the card. Um, it's a 4-drop purple with Ward, Shade, Corrupted Shade. You drop it on Corrupted Shade. Corrupted Shade, if its ward breaks, it's dead. You drop it on Corrupted Shade, it stays alive. So I think, and not to
It's a
like,
flexible card.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I think Corpus Disease is so good, and I don't want to spend like 2 hours. I know I've just talked a whole lot on Corpus Disease, and I'm sorry for that, but it's it does have a lot of value, and I'm surprised that I don't see it more on the ladder because of it. The only card moving from Corpus Disease and moving on to Firebolt. Firebolt can be an enabler, but it's not necessarily an enabler. So while we do have Scimitar, Steel Scimitar, which you added on, and it's effectively giving another thing and enables another creature to have to +2/+2. Firebolt just does 2 damage to a creature.
It's early game removal, and that's always relevant.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I still think Firebolt's good, but as far as calling it I don't see how it enables.
Really fit Charmer's. It really doesn't. It doesn't fit Charmer's, analysis. But that's an analysis is general, and that's why I talked about outliers. In terms of like the generally, the most commonly used 1-drop creatures are ones that replace value, and then here's 3 that don't do that, but here's why they're good enough to be played anyways, and so
Mm-hmm.
I think Charmer's analysis of, he's talking about one cost cards in general,
Mm-hmm.
and he's talking about, including actions in that, and so, we're talking about actions, and a lot of these are enablers for other combos, but like I would argue that, you know, Firebolt just being removal is good enough, and then, Sky Patrol is an open enabler. Corpus Disease open enabler and flexible enough that you can use it for face damage. You can use it like so. It enables your silence or your catapults and your corrupted shades to be better than they are, right? But it
Mm-hmm.
also gives you the flexibility of, oh crap, that's I gotta silence that enemy creature even if I'm giving a +2, or my guy got shackled. Well, I'd rather silence and have it go face, right? Same for I'd argue that Shadow Shift is less of an enable, more of a all around good card, because it's the fact that it replaces itself means that it's good any turn. It's always a good card. It's never you're never sad to see that because you can always at least cycle it for the card. So I think Shadow Shift is like past that. It has evolved past being just just enabler, and it has become raw
Mm-hmm.
power. I really do believe that. I'm kind of joking, but I think Shadow Shift is nuts.
We have I do think this is a question worth asking. We do, just to let the audience know, we do have a question Q&A at the end of all of these talk shows. So if you guys have questions, we like to hold them towards the end. But I do think this is a good question, so we'll let this one slide. Harp asked a question: would you rather have execute than fireball at turn 1 or 2? Um, I would much rather have on turn 1 or 2. I'd much rather have execute. Just because it execute does power if I remember correctly. So something's like a 2-3 or 2-4. I'd much rather have execute. But it's like, as far as like, I don't know. I just think overall execute doesn't have the flexibility that I want with firebolt. So when you ask me this question, like as far as like deck building is concerned, if I could just put any card and anything, it doesn't matter what the colors whatsoever. I would almost much rather have firebolt, because regardless of the fact it's doing 2 damage, while executes has its limitations. I
Yeah,
don't know.
turn one and turn two. If I could have like turn one and turn two, execute is strictly the better card because it answers more threats cleanly. But in terms of a deck building perspective, after turn two, it gets significantly worse. Like
Hmm.
way worse.
Right.
So unless you really need to remove opponents, ones and twos, in which case you're normally playing executes in conjunction with firebolts, right? Um, if you really need their ones and twos and occasionally threes, it does go around like Daggerfall Mates, which is it's almost an auto include in blue.
Hmm.
Um, so like it gets around Ward, which Firebolt doesn't. It also like more people play 2 mana 2/3s than play 2 mana 3/2s. So like that's something to keep in mind. Like it's going to be more useful against the average 2-drop than a Firebolt. Firebolt won't clear Barrow Stalkers, it won't clear certain pawnbrokers, et cetera, but an execute will. But in terms of deck building, Broski's right. Like I'd rather have Firebolt every time if I had to choose between one or the other.
All right. Let's So we talked for a bit about one drops, and we entertained the idea with all of these other things. But let's talk about the Ring of Magica, and we've talked about the Ring of Magica before, but I want to bring up the Ring of Magica because there's this huge difference between 1 drops and 2 drops that happen in the game, right? Now, as we've stated before, the ring doesn't really seem to have much of a difference statistically from what people like CVH have claimed to us, or Bethesda in general. However, on aggro v aggro matchups, the ring has shown to be a threat, and this is something that we talked about before. Now, for the most part, what we were talking about today was how a lot of the cards in 1 drops are effectively enablers. That doesn't mean every single card, as Nerd and I discussed, like the Firebolt card, but I do want to say that a lot of these cards are enablers. So taking that into consideration, the fact that a lot of 1 cards are enablers, and how a lot of 2 cards will actually start helping you build up what you're trying to effectively do in a deck. Like I almost feel like 2 is your foundation. 1 enables you that foundation. 1 is kind of like the blueprint, and 2 is, I don't know if that's the best way of describing it, but 2 is that foundation. So for example, like if you were doing an aggro deck, Circle Initiate is a 2/2, but when a rune breaks, she effectively becomes a 4/3. That fits for an aggro playstyle, and having something else to enable that, such as Relentless Raider, whenever you drop it on the board, can do more damage. So I've heard an argument before by one person who said, "Well, how, what if we just?" And he said this sarcastically; he wasn't being serious. You can't just say this is an issue with 1 drops, because imagine if you made all the 2 drops 1 drops. I don't think that's the answer either, because that would just make the game um aggravating. I just would be very frustrated seeing cards like Circle Initiate hitting the board on first play. But um,
Well, and the
I
only thing that would change there is it'd be even worse because what would happen is your opponent would use the Ring of Magicka to play 2 2 drops instead of just one. So
right.
silly. I mean,
Mhm.
it must have been a joke or something. Cause
Yeah, he wasn't being serious when he made that comment.
yeah.
It was more of like trying to prove a point to me.
Right.
When we were talking about the Ring of Magicka, and so the question is like having these when you have one the blueprints, your enablers, switching over to Foundation, right? And then you have a creature with the Ring of Magicka. As you see, a lot of these cards are usually a bit weaker. For example, like we would have, and I know I brought up Relentless Raider, but I'll do it again. Relentless Raider is a 2/1. Okay, do I think you should use it on the first play? No. But if, let's say, you draw a bad hand, okay, where you draw all of your high summons, which you don't want in an aggro deck, and then you draw your Relentless Raider, well, you're going to probably want to drop them down simply because you need something on the board, because you have a tempo that you have to maintain, right? Well, then your opponent can drop down their card, which, let's say, they have a Windkeep Spellsword, which is a 2/2/2 with ward. So how I'm not saying, I'm not proposing at all that we get rid of the Ring of Magicka. And as Dead Nerd explained in his article, he compared it to Hearthstone, and he said, well, Hearthstone has 1 lane, and so they do have something that's equivalent to the Ring of Magicka. They have a coin where you use it once for the second player, and it helps them gain an advantage. But you also have to take into consideration they only have 1 lane to deal with, while in Legends we have 2. So, and I don't know, like as far as like solving this, and how we can go more in depth with this, and how do we think Legends should fix this, I'll let Dead Nerd hit that topic.
Well, yeah. So we were talking about the comparison to Hearthstone, and so I guess let me just say this. I'm gonna sort of elaborate and quote myself a little bit here from the article because people who don't play Hearthstone need to understand this. So Hearthstone just has the 1 lane, and then they have if you go second, you get an extra card, and you get another card called the coin, which effectively works like a Ring of Magicka, right? Um, so I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm having to clear my throat. But when you play a 1 drop, and 1 drops in Hearthstone have been pretty strong, and obviously you want to find a turn 1. So let's say you're the first player and you play a 1 drop on turn 1. So your opponent has 3 options. They either play nothing, and they cede a large advantage to the opponent, who will inevitably like play a 2 drop or play some sort of spell that enhances their 2 drop, hopefully, or at least hits their hero power, which is a 2 cost card, which will buff their board state or in some way help their position, right? Um, that's their first place. Obviously, that's not super great. Or they can answer with a 1 cost of their own, but unfortunately, because that creature, unless it happens to have charge, which usually aren't very high statted when they have charge, so it probably won't matter anyways. The first player will have the first opportunity to interact with that 1 cost creature that the opponent played. So they can either play a 2 cost or 1 cost spell to destroy it and keep their 1 cost guy alive, or they can trade with their 1 cost guy if the stats work out that way, or they can play a 2 cost down, trade with the 1 cost guy, let them both die, but then still have a 2 cost card advantage. So there's a lot of ways that, because the first player has the first opportunity to interact with the second player's cards, and so the thing with the coin, so the third option is to play it and use it to bring out a 2 cost card to rival the opponent's 1 cost card, and they're hoping to flip the momentum. So they're hoping that their opponent's turn 2 play cannot enhance the 1 cost enough that it breaks even again. They want, well, actually they're okay with the break even. They just don't want their opponent to end their turn with an advantage. They want the momentum to flip to them. So obviously the third option is the ideal situation, but if you don't have a 2-costable answer, you hold on to it, use it later, right? The difference is with Legends, you have 3 chances to flip the momentum because you have 3 ring charges. And coupled with the fact, which by the way, I talked about this, the average 2-drop is significantly more powerful, and the 2-drop slot in Elder Scrolls is significantly more refined because they have almost 100 2-drops to choose from compared to the 46. I have it somewhere in my article. Let me find it. I think 46 1-cost cards. There's almost twice as many. Um, there's 97 2-cost cards and 46 2-cost creatures, excuse me, and 46 1-cost creatures. And so like your opponent can brute force a shift in momentum by on his turn 1 ringing out a 2-drop, on his turn 2 ringing out a 3-drop, on his turn 3 ringing out a 4-drop, and just brutally force a shift in momentum that kind of overcompensates. Now that's assuming that he ends up with the cards to play that style, but any aggressive deck has a low enough curve that is likely to be found. So the Ring of Magicka, in comparison to the coin, is significantly more potent. And then when you combine it with the dual lane system, if the first player plays down, a strong creature, and you want to follow up as the second player with your Goblin Skull, you slap it in the other lane. You don't want it to trade. You want it for the pilfer effect. So you effectively get to play your card with leaving your opponent's 1-cost in the wrong lane to answer, and then the next turn can turn around and play a 3-drop that will answer it, keeping your 2-drop alive. Whereas in Hearthstone, if they'd played the Goblin Skull down, it would have had to interact because of the single lane. So those 2 factors combined make it a poor environment for 1-cost creatures to interplay, considering that it's a generally weak investment of the hand resource, or cards in hand as a resource. It's just not worth the investment, considering it's going to be either left stranded or cleanly cleared. I know that sort of got a little,
Right.
I hope I didn't go too far all over the place with that, but like that, it's not just one thing. It's not just the Ring of Magicka. It's the Ring of Magicka in conjunction with, the dual lane system, in conjunction with the fact that decks nowadays can heavily, focus their 2-cost slot to do exactly what they want. So there's redundancy in that position. There's significantly more 2-costers that have above average stat distribution than there ever was. So I mean, just in now we have the Surin Pawnbroker, which is a 2/3 for 2, and it generates a card to replace it, which is free, which you can then play. And then you've got like Barrowstalker, which is a 2-mana 2/3 with drain and guard. Like, it's crazy the amount of powerful, potent 2-costs that are above average stat distribution. And nowadays, people can just cherry pick the best ones because there's so many options. 97 options of 2-cost creatures. So many options.
So the question is, um, I think okay. I'm gonna make a general statement, and then I'm gonna add on to the question here. Okay, general statement would be an easy answer to the easy answer to solving this, and we discussed this before, was having a cooldown for the Ring of Magicka. That would be an easy, that would be like the fix, but I'm saying this is an easy response for right now, where per turn they do a cooldown. This would help with aggro v aggro matchups. This would also allow time for an opponent to, I don't know, respond to the Goblin Skulk that's in the other lane. Because even though Goblin Skulk might have drawn a Cruel Fire Bloom, every single turn while it's attacking, you still have effectively by round 2, hey, now I can catch up, and then by round 3, then they can use it again. But at least it allows for some breathing room, especially in aggro v aggro matchups. However, I think a more complicated way of handling this issue is just overall balancing cards in general. But I don't really know what that would look like, and I don't even know where really to begin. But have you being a more experienced player, where would you begin if you were a developer?
So if you want to reduce the impact of the Ring of Magicka without changing it, right? So if you want the Ring of Magica to be less swingy without changing it, you reduce the average stat distribution of two costs. So you keep two costs around the 2-2 stat line. You try to avoid going over two defense if possible. Why? So that one cost creatures can trade with two cost creatures. The average attack stat of a one cost creature is just a little below two. Um, so, if you, so that way you want to incentivize people to play one cost creatures with two attack that will then trade with two cost creatures. So even if they play a two cost creature out, that one cost creature can shadow shift over to that lane and confront it, or just open up with an easy trade um, there. But ultimately, it's too hard to fix now. You'd have to change like
You'd have to change
2,000
so
cards.
much.
Yeah, I really see that's the thing. Like, I really love the idea of the one turn cooldown because it adds another element to manage, right? I mean, you know, I think no player would argue that the game should be made simpler. I think people in general argue for more choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
For more nuanced decision. And the ring is a perfect example of the fact that you're playing knowing that your opponent, has this powerful tool. It's all upfront, it's all on the table, right? So by making so you have to play around that as the first player pretty heavily right now. Whereas I think the second player, it's just this open flexibility. It's like, oh well, I could do this, or I could do this, or I could ring now and do this, or I could ring later and do this. But I think by making it if I ring now, I can't ring next turn. That adds this whole other dimension to the game that makes playing second player a little bit more uh, refined. It becomes less of a brute force tactic of, well, just play my best things and hope it carries me to the end. And it becomes okay, it's my turn one. I can either use my ring now and bring out my Windkeep Spellsword, or I can pass turn one and on turn two use my ring to bring up my Young Mammoth. Because if I ring on turn two, I can't ring on turn three. And of course, it creates the interesting situation of, okay, my opening hand is a 2, a 3, and a 4, right? And I'm the second player. Turn one, my opponent plays down a threat. Okay, if I ring out my 2 cost, I won't have a 2 cost to play on turn two, and I won't be able to then ring out a 3 cost. So, like, do I want to bet on hopefully top decking a 2 cost to then play because I won't be able to ring out a 3 cost? Like, it just adds more like decision making to the game, and I think everyone would probably agree that that's generally a positive thing. Adding layers to the decisions that you make is good,
And more
and so
rewarding.
yeah, it feels like, man, it's so. And then you don't draw that 2-drop. Oh man, thank goodness I didn't get greedy and ring out my Windkeep Spellsword because I wouldn't have had a follow up play. You
Mm-hmm.
see what I mean? Yeah.
Right.
So I think that is seriously a dope solution that I hope is like being considered. And I wish there was more open discussion about this. Like, I feel like the Legends community, even if they don't agree, they just sort of like beat these topics to a pulp in the idea that hopefully something will spur the design team to action.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so far, not a lot, but I'm really hoping that with the change in developer, first off, this goes in general. I think in video games, there's this tendency of like, well, we don't want to promise anything because people get mad if we can't fulfill it right away. But I think that more communication goes a long way, and I would love to see Sparky Pants do a little bit better when it comes to like issues like this. Like, look, we would just stop arguing, we would just stop debating the ring if they would say we're never changing the Ring of Magica, or if they say we're looking at the Ring of Magica. I think that would inspire
And
people to be
not
like,
not
oh,
only
that's really
that, like you would have
interesting.
everybody going on the subreddit saying their ideas on the ring, and they might even come up with a better idea than the developers. So they're saying, "Hey, we're
Right.
looking at the ring. This opens discussion."
Exactly.
Right. So, I mean, in the community, I mean, I've heard developers say this a lot of times. It's surprising what the community finds to exploit on the game that we developed. I
Yeah.
understand that they're the second developers, but it happens. Like the community sometimes they play the game so much that, and there's so many people that they exploit the game in ways that not even the developers thought was possible.
Yeah.
So, and that
Well,
always happens.
Yeah, and like like being an Overwatch fan, I love playing Overwatch. It's a game that I play very casually. I'm stuck in gold rank. Okay, so I'm not that good either. All right, but um, like one of the best things about Overwatch is the constant communication between the design team and the player base. They're hey currently looking at this. Like they won't say what they're doing, but they will tell people ahead of time, hey, like we're looking at this, and then people will start talking about it, discussing what do we think might be changed, what do we think the problem is, and then they can like sort of source from all of that feedback and like oh that's nice, or they can see what people are really hope don't get changed about things. It's just a good policy to communicate more rather than less, and the community appreciates that because they feel like they don't feel surprised when something magically happens, right? Because like honestly, I really hate that, and I love that it got announced, but I really hate that it was, yep, balance changes are coming later next week. Why couldn't they have said we're looking at balance changes right now? Why couldn't
Mhm.
they have said that a month ago, 2 months ago, when everyone has just been still sick of the same archetypes? Like I know they're working on Frostbite, but how hard is it to go and say we're looking into balance changes, guys?
Mhm.
Let it give us some input, or even if they don't say that, just to keep the community in the loop of we're looking into balance changes, because that like sort of it just makes the community feel better that the design team isn't just turning a deaf ear to everything that they're saying. So uh glad that we're seeing balance changes. I know that's kind of off topic, but it's just something that frustrates me is I want more communication out of everything. you know More communication better. It's hard to communicate. I have a hard time getting on Twitter to say that I'm going to go live in the morning, right? It's annoying. It's like, oh, do I really have to do that? But I do it,
Mhm.
right? And I feel like that's
And
something
it
that
sucks
like,
when you miscommunicate because then people blow
uh-huh.
what you say out of proportion. So, I mean, communication can be difficult from both ends.
Yeah. It's just like, more communication is better. I would
uh,
favor over communication. And that's just yeah. I'm done ranting on that.
all right. Well, I got work in 20 minutes, so we're gonna go on ahead and open up Q&A for about 10 minutes. So if you guys have any questions out of me or Dead Nerd talking about the discussion today with one drop cards and the Ring of Magic, feel free to ask us. Or if you would like to have any personal questions to me or to Dead Nerd that deals with Legends in general, it doesn't have to just be about today's episode or even what my favorite color is. By the way, I don't have one. Feel free to ask those kind of questions as well. So as they're maybe possibly getting into the kind of questions that they're doing, uh, we can read what Ice has to say here. Um, Slimer just said, I think the more we do communication, the less the miscommunication happens because the more the community gets used to how balance cycle happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely have to agree with Nerd when he went, on his political rant about how America would be so much better if Sparky Pants were to communicate effectively to the entire world. How
Yes.
we just need a bit more communication. And I think if you actually look at the Sparky Pants website, I don't know if you knew this or not. As soon as they became devs, I went to their website, and on their website it states that they are for open communication. They like to communicate with their player base, and that's one of their philosophies. So I think encouraging them and just reminding them, like, hey, you guys said this, will encourage them to do that. J Harp
Yeah.
asks a question. As a player of movement decks, Monk that I know of, what are your thoughts of the synergy or movement archer compared to Monk? That is a nerd question, 110%.
Yeah. Movement archer. So okay. I think so. The main thing you're missing out of Monk is there's two things you're missing from Monk. That you're missing the Monk Strike, which is a really nice way in the aggro matchups, the aggro mirrors, to get a little bit of heal in, which can sometimes in a race situation save your ass. Um, and the other thing you're missing is East March Crusader, which is an aggressive movement shenanigans deck, which I think is the only way you can play a movement deck is aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're missing the ability to draw a card off of or having a rune broken, and it's just a very large body for a big attacking 4/2 for 3 that draws you a card. So those are the two big things you miss in Monk. I think Movement Archer is totally viable. I typically run it in a Goblin shell, right? Because I think that the Goblin tribal synergies. First off, like you have the 3 cost 2/2 that grows every time you play a green card is really strong. Unfortunately, I don't see a lot of benefit to moving. There's not a lot of red cards that benefit from moving. Like Movement Monk is already a green heavy deck. The only thing you get access to, obviously, inside the Monk Strike is Archer's Gambit, and that's nice too. That also allows you to use some pilfer effects. So like that makes Daring Cut Purse an even better card because you can Archer's Gambit over, hit face for 1, pilfer, then swing, pilfer again, right? So yeah, there's definitely, I think it's totally viable. I haven't messed with it much recently because normally, like I said, I run it out of goblins because that big goblin that comes down and buffs all the other goblins, pretty dope. The only other thing to consider is when I run Movement Monk, I use Goblin Skulk with the 0-cost Movement Shadows, but there's the argument that in a Goblin heavy deck, you wouldn't want Movement Shadows. You would instead want that 0-cost Goblin, just Murkwater Goblin, I think is all it's called, which could then get buffed by that 4-drop Goblin that comes down. It's tough. Maybe you run both. Maybe you run 6 0-costs, but that decision tree is tough. So I'm not really sure. Maybe I should mess with that a bit on stream. Hope that answers your question, JT.
Well, I'm gonna go on ahead and open up the giveaway for the. Guess what? We're having another 2-pack Morrowind giveaway. So if you guys would like to join in on that, I have these packs to give away, and I just love giving them away. So we're gonna open it up. We're gonna do the fancy reset, and then open giveaway. You guys go on ahead and fill that in, and as soon as we close up this giveaway, we are going to end the stream on this high, happy note. Feel free if you guys have any questions about what you guys would like to see, like anything that you guys would like to see in future episodes. Feel free once again to tweet me at mage_broski on Twitter. Go on ahead and find me there on Twitter, and you guys can tweet at me to be like, hey broski, we would really like to see a little bit more of words. I can't speak them. More like a certain episode. If you guys want a specific episode, feel free to ask those questions.
And you can tweet at me too at deadbrokenerd.
No, don't tweet at him. Tweet at me.
And it doesn't have to be about it. You can tweet at me about whatever.
No, it has to be about Legends. But okay. Yeah.
I didn't know. Them's the rules. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, all right. No, you guys can tweet at us about anything.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys? While we're waiting, we're gonna give people a little more time with the raffle, I think. But any more questions? Yeah, I'm thinking about. I've been making or working on my Singleton Assassin deck on stream, and I was working on Singleton Battle Mage. The idea of pulling Rothgar Forge off of Siege of Strassim Kai, which would be really fun because so you would run 2 supports. You would run Set's Masterwork, and then you run Rothgar Forge, and then that's a great way to cheat Rothgar Forge in for free because 7 cost is a little much. But I thought that would be. I might mess with that later. Probably not today. I'm not going to stream today. I got too much busy work to do, but probably tomorrow. I was thinking about messing with that. I really think I don't know if you've looked at any Singleton stuff, but Siege is super powerful. Holy crap!
Catapult? Siege Catapult?
No. Siege of Strassim Kai. It's
okay.
Action that if you're running a Singleton deck, you play a random creature, item, action, and support from your deck. But if you tune your deck so that you only have a couple supports and a couple items which are really strong, you can basically end up for 10 magic of playing something I don't know, I think one time I hit I high rolled and I hit an 8-drop and then into a Mighty Conjuring, into a Tome of Alteration, into a Mundus Stone. Like, so I end up like it was almost over. It was over 20 Magica for the price of 10. It was pretty crazy.
We have a question coming in here from Slime,
Mm.
asking a question that Justin didn't answer. Shame on you. No, I asked this to Justin yesterday, and he didn't know for sure or wouldn't say because he knows it changes. LOL. But any predictions on what decks will take over if conscription is kicked off the top rung of the meta? Uh, no, I don't know. I'm sorry. Um, if conscription is dropped off the top, because the issue. Okay, so here's the issue with your question, right? Regardless if Justin knows the answer or not, the issue with your question is to people who don't know. We don't know what else is also being fixed. They said balance changes, so this can even go to aggro warrior. My instant thought when you asked me this question was more aggro play for Halalu as well as aggro warrior because that's already right now that's already top for the meta right now. That's the way that's what everybody else is playing in the meta. So you get rid of conscription, people are going to stick to whatever it is that they're already familiar with. They're not going to just change because conscription was changed. But it's like as far as like actually answering that question, I don't know. Deadburn Earth's got this like thinking face, and I'll let you answer it then, because you're scaring me with that face, dude.
Yeah, it's kind of a scary thought, right? I think mid range will have a much better time. So I think you'll start seeing some more mid range stuff.
Mm,
Um, I think Ramp Warrior will have um, a harder time because one of the big advantages of Ramp Warrior was the rage plays, which punishes, but I don't punishes conscriptions, but I don't think it'll go away either, right?
right.
Um, I think this is just off the top of my head. Two things. One, if conscription is the only thing that is nerfed in Telvanni, Telvanni will still be around and still be powerful. Because Bradford Lee, one of the first top streamers in this game, um, came back for a month after like a year of not playing because it was a whole drama thing. But like, Direwolf was doing some things, and then Drops was screwing people over. That was back when people were farming Drops, and so it's hurting major content creators. But Bradford Lee came back and played for a month and laddered to like #1 legend, and then quit again.
Right.
Um, but he was playing a hard control Telvanni um,
Mm,
that wasn't running like the conscription package, but I think he was running Alter, and I think he was running like heavy debates, experiments, ice storms. Like basically, I think he might have even been running Mushroom Tower, but it was just hard control Telvanni, and it seemed to be pretty darn effective. So I think we might see some of that. I really am concerned, quite frankly, that we're going to see Control Tribunal uh, start dominating the environment. I don't know this for sure. It depends on how, because if mid range comes back, right,
mm-hmm.
aggro gets a little worse. Um, because mid range is hampered by conscription. So if conscription is unplayable, mid range will come back a bit. If mid range comes back a bit, aggro gets a little bit worse, which means that with aggro not as prevalent, hard control tribunal starts feeling a lot better because hard control tribunal will eat mid range for breakfast, usually. Obviously, not every game, right? So that's my initial unthought out response. But obviously, that's only given the idea that conscription is diminished and nothing else gets heavily screwed up. But likely that will happen too.
De-
So yeah,
Depending
there
on
you
how
go.
many balances are made, we may even make an episode about it. I mean, if it's minimal, we'll just keep it in the news section. But I mean, if it's a whole lot, we'll probably
Mm,
even have an episode about it because there's a lot to talk about. So feel
yeah.
free, Slime, in the future after they come out with a patch for us to kind of talk because we'll evaluate it because that's what we do. And I'm looking forward to talking about it anyways. I'm running short on time. So we're gonna go on ahead and end the podcast now. Those were
Raffle.
great questions. I loved them. So let's go on ahead and pick a winner for the raffle. Da-da-da-da. And we have DeVille winning the raffle for the 2 pack of
Yeah.
Morrowind. Yeah, we have that going away. So
Oh,
take the love right there. I've seen DeVille before, so welcome so much, DeVille. And feel free to message me on Twitch so that way I can get the whisper to me on Twitch so I can get the messaging to you. I'll send it to you probably within the next 10 to 15 minutes after the stream. And anyways, until
Don't
next
forget,
time.
guys.
Yeah.
One more thing. Frenzied Elite. Okay, I'm done. We have to mention every episode. It's obligatory.
We did mention him. We mentioned him on the
Wait.
Charmers episode.
All right,
So
one more
did you
time.
watch Charmers
more
episode on
time.
Friends of Elite? Yeah.
One more time. Frenzied Elite. Okay, good.
Friends of
I'm
Elite.
done.
Friends of Elite. Yes.
And we're out.
All
He's
right,
our
we're
mascot.
out.
He's our mascot now.
Yes. So until next time, peace out. Love live. Feel free to catch us every single Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And be sure to follow Dead Burt Nerd on both Twitch and on YouTube.